What's going on, guys? Welcome to the David F Haas Podcast. I'm your host, David F Haas. This podcast is dedicated to helping people become aware of what it is that's holding them back from achieving greatness. I believe that greatness exists inside all of us, and it's just our job to unlock that greatness. And today's podcast, what I want to talk about is kind of the first step to unlocking that greatness that already exists within. And that first step is really can be summed up in one simple word, which is awareness. You know, without the awareness of a problem, we cannot resolve the problem. And I think the challenge here is most of us are completely unaware of what it is that's actually preventing us from achieving our maximum potential in any area of our life. And a lot of time when you hear the word maximum potential, you think of things like money. But maximum potential means in relationships, it means in physical accomplishments, it means in health, in love, and then also, for sure, success as well. We want to be fulfilling our maximum potential because that's when we feel the fullest, when we're living up to what we believe is inside of us. And I don't know, this is actually a question that I'd like you guys to post in comments below is, do you feel like you're meant to do something great? And most people, I guess, that are listening to this podcast will probably say yes. But I'm wondering if that is something that everyone feels inside of themselves. This is something that I've felt since I was a kid. And I didn't know if it was unique to me or if most people were feeling that. But I believe that we all have this innate this instinct inside of us that we're supposed to do something amazing in this world. The problem being is that we are such innocent beings as children, and we're like these sponges that just absorb every single thing that was introduced to us. And a lot of the times those things that were introduced to us weren't true. And the mind doesn't have the ability to decipher the difference from truth or falsehood. Dr. David Hawkins wrote a book called Truth versus Falsehood. You can check that out, and where he really digs into how the mind, the ego, takes on these programs so willingly, and it's because of the innocence of the child that we do so. So most of spiritual work is about realizing what programs that we bought into and learning how to undo them. But in today's podcast, what I really want to talk about is how do we become aware of something that isn't even in our awareness. So let me try and give you an example of something that I was completely unaware of that was holding me back. And then once I became aware of it, I was able to heal in a second from an addiction that I had suffered from a long time, which was my addiction to alcohol. So I went to see this healer once, local healer, and I said to her, so what do you think about my drinking? It seems to be getting a little bit excessive. And she's putting her hands on me, doing her thing, and she says, I think it's self-doubt. And I was like, self-doubt? What are you talking about? Because in my mind, I was confident, like I felt like I could do anything, kind of thing. But she had pinpointed self-doubt. And then later through time, that was kind of like the seed that was planted. Later through time, with more spiritual work, with more reading, with more study, it became clear to me that the reason that I was drinking alcohol was because I was fearful that I wouldn't be accepted anymore. I wouldn't be the cool guy anymore if I stopped drinking. And with that realization, when I kind of put all the pieces of the puzzle together, I was able to make the decision right on the spot that I'm okay, now I'm ready to quit drinking. And I set a date and I stopped drinking. Didn't do AA, didn't do any programs, not knocking those programs. But this is the power that comes from spiritual realization, right? So my coaching system is based on the 3 R's: realize, release, and realign. So this was under the realize. Once I became aware of something that I was unaware of for my whole entire life, just that awareness alone was enough to create this dramatic shift in my life. So what I'm hoping for, I'm hoping that will happen for you in this podcast today is you might create some awareness around the things that you're unaware of that are holding you back. If that makes sense? Yeah. Okay. So let me just recap. Most of us are unaware of what it is that's actually holding us back. So in order to transcend these lower states of consciousness, we need to become aware. So how do we become aware of something we're unaware of? That's exactly what I'm going to give you, the tools the tools to discover that in today's podcast. So this might be one that you might want to listen to with a pen and paper, because I'm going to give you a bunch of stuff. If you're in your car or listening on a walk or whatever, you can always just replay it. So how do you become aware of things that are outside of your awareness? So this is really the cornerstone of my coaching is we are all limited by the circle of what we know. I usually have a ball and I'm holding it up. This was taught to me by my mentor, but everything that we know exists inside of this circle, okay? And in order for us to resolve any problems, we need to learn to get outside of that circle. Einstein said that a problem cannot be solved from the same level of consciousness it was created. So you can see the importance of getting outside of that circle. We can't solve a problem from the same place it was created. So how do we get outside of our circle? So there's a couple techniques that we can do that will really start to allow us to become aware. So step one is to just start listening to our thoughts. All right. So pick a few moments throughout the day and just observe what is going on in the mind. All right. So I do this in the shower. I do this when I get in my car. I do this when I walk through doorways. I do this sometimes in meditation, where I'm just listening to what my thoughts are. And then once you start listening to your thoughts, again, that awareness alone might be enough to start helping you realize what it is that is cycling, what patterns you're buying into, or what patterns just not you're buying into, what patterns are repeating over and over again in your head. So the next step you can do is, after you've done a few practices of just listening, we're not trying to control or silence our thoughts, we're just listening to what our mind has to say. Then after a day of doing this, you do it for 2-3 minutes a day, 2 or 3 minutes per session, and then if you could do it maybe 4 or 5 times in a day. The next day, what I'd like you to do is just sit in a meditation and compartmentalize these thoughts. So you're basically just listening to the mind. Again, you're not trying to control the thoughts. You're just listening, observing. And wherever you find your mind going, then you can kind of label that. So this thought is about the future. This thought is about my ex-girlfriend, or boyfriend. This thought is about some guilt that I have from cheating on a test. So you'll start to realize where your thoughts are kind of going most. So once we become aware of where our thoughts are going most, that awareness alone is an indicator of what we're holding in mind most often. Okay, so let's say, for example, you find yourself, all of your thoughts are in the future. Okay, so the mind, the ego, cannot exist in the present moment. So this is why it's so hard for us to quiet our minds, right? Because the ego is constantly running all the time. And even when you get really good at quieting your mind, the ego will still just sing a song to kind of show that it's, hey, I'm still here, right? So this is the challenge that we all face, right? So when you start to become aware of what thoughts you are, just that awareness alone begins to reduce those thoughts, okay? So if you're finding that your thoughts are going to the future all the time, this is where all anxiety lives, right? All anxiety comes from projecting into the future. So anytime you're looking at the outcome, you're thinking about what might happen. This is what creates anxiety. So if you start to recognize that, all my thoughts are in the future, then you can start to realize, okay, why are all my thoughts going into the future? And most of the time, these thoughts are a program or a survival pattern that is trying to protect you from feeling something, okay? It's trying to protect you from feeling some sort of pain. So overthinking, for example, is a survival pattern that was created to try and protect you from, let's say, the fear of failing. So maybe you, I'll give you my own example. I remember missing an appointment with someone really important once. I remember missing a test. This is a pattern that has gone over and over again in my life. I missed an exam once in university. And so when I started doing these exercises, I came to the realization that even though I had something written in my calendar and planned out, there was no way I was going to forget it. My mind was still constantly telling me, don't forget you got this appointment. Don't forget this appointment. And then when I, with a little bit deeper, looking a little bit deeper into this, I realized that this was just a program to protect me from feeling the shame that I felt from missing that exam and missing that important meeting I had with a potential business partner. So this is what the ego will do is it will find ways to avoid feeling pain. Okay, so the second step in my coaching is to release and learn how to become free of all of these emotions that are creating all of these programs, belief systems, survival patterns, and thoughts. And then once you become free of that emotion, that's at the kind of the core, the root of this whole entire thing, which is also tied to a belief system. Once you learn how to become free of that, you no longer need the survival pattern anymore. You're free of it. You don't need the overthinking. You don't need the projecting into the future, because you're free of the fear of judgment, potentially. Okay, so this is the nature of the work. But today, what we're focused on is creating awareness. So that could be one thing that you could do to just start creating awareness around what you're saying to yourself on a regular basis. And once you do this, you're going to start to realize that you're probably saying the same thing over and over again multiple times. The next thing would be to examine the behaviors that you have. So what are some behaviors that you have that you don't like about yourself? So one of my behaviors that I didn't like recently was my diet. I wasn't like really clean on my diet, even though I'm a vegetarian. I would say I eat relatively healthy. I was still eating a lot of sugar, a lot of like white flour and pasta, things I know that are big no-nos. But because I made it my intention to become more healthy, I started noticing when I was going to the fridge, right? And there was an association with that behavior that food was comfort, okay? So what I want you to do next is just to create a list of what behaviors that you feel are holding you back from reaching your maximum potential. So just to give you some examples to get the mind working, procrastination, perfectionism, overthinking is one of them. What else? Lack of energy. Okay. Some of these things might be some ideas, so you can just list them all out. And then what I want you to do is I want you to write out what story you have told yourself that is keeping you in this holding pattern, that is keeping you experiencing the same problem over and over again. And this is what most of us do. Okay. Most of us will experience the same problem over and over and over again until we finally create the awareness necessary to break that cycle. Okay, so using my own personal example with becoming free of my addiction to pop and sugar, I had to quit, I don't know, probably 100 times. And every time I came to a little bit more realization, then I started attracting more people into my life that had more information. Even my own personal clients would give me information about what I needed to become free of this addiction. And it's kind of like a tuning fork or a radar, an antenna on your head. Once you kind of set your intention, all that you need will begin flowing into your life. But if you never set the intention, or you never realize that you can put this radar on the top of your head, then you're going to be completely unaware of all the things that are coming at you all the time. Okay, so in this exercise, when we're going to write out the behaviors that are unwanted or that we feel are not serving us, and identifying the story that we're telling ourselves, you're then going to be able to create the awareness of the patterns. And you can even probably look back in your life and see how this story and this pattern continue to play out in multiple different areas. So just with the awareness alone, you've already created the momentum that is needed to begin becoming free of this cycle. Okay, so this is a really great technique, is you're just bringing awareness to the stories you're telling yourself. The next thing you could do with that same exercise is you could ask yourself, what emotion is at the core of these behaviors? What emotion are you trying to avoid by staying in this same holding pattern, by staying in these same cycles? So if you can identify the emotion that you're trying to avoid, again, I'm beating a dead horse here, I feel. Then, again, that awareness will tune into that radar and start to make you realize of when you are going into survival patterns that are making you avoid feeling that feeling. And at that moment, you can choose to stay in the survival pattern, or you can choose to do something about the emotion. And maybe I'll make this podcast a 3-part series. This part will be under realize. The next Wednesday will be release. The following Wednesday will be realign, because that's essentially what my coaching system is all about. So, what behaviors are unwanted, what story have you told yourself, and what underlying emotion is tied to this. You could also, if you really wanted to get really deep, you could try and identify where it all began in your life. What was the original incident? What happened? Where did this begin, right? So I'm going to give you my own personal example on this one. It's a really good one. So I became aware that for me, food was an issue because when I was a kid, I was left kind of to fend for myself, and I was taking care of myself. And so I developed really bad eating habits. And so I came to this awareness at one point that I was looking for a caregiver in my life. I was essentially looking for a mother, someone that was going to take care of me. But through this process, I realized that I had to become my own caregiver. Okay, there's one realization, but it still wasn't enough to allow me to break free. And then recently in one of my groups, we were doing a letting go meditation. And what I wanted to let go of was my addiction to sugar. And I basically asked for the truth to be revealed in that meditation. And I was brought back to this moment where it was just after my mother had died. My mother died when I was 9 years old. We walked into my grandmother's house, and she's a German, really foreign, and she reached out her arms and she looked at me and she said, we lost the mamo. And even still to this day, the emotion wells up inside of me. And I remember blocking that emotion, right? The emotion of grief, which I should have in that moment been able to let it all out. And I went into the bathroom and hid because I was this 9-year-old kid. I didn't want people to see me cry. And so now I'm sitting in the bathroom, and this is all in the meditation about why I'm trying to quit, how I'm going to try and quit sugar. And I'm in the bathroom, I'm back in this meditation, and I'm just allowing myself to experience the grief that I avoided feeling when I was 9 years old. But then there also was anger at myself, anger at my brother for not, because I knew he would make fun of me if I cried, but that maybe he wouldn't. That was also just a story I had told myself. Anyways, in this meditation, I was able to release all of these emotions that I had been holding on to from this original incident. But then I kind of was lost in the meditation, and I said to myself, well, what's trying to be revealed to me here? And it was like, oh, this is the moment where sugar became a problem for you, because I started seeking comfort in food, right? Because at my grandmother's house, they always had a bunch of sweets, and they had a candy drawer. And this is when I started going to food for comfort. So when I was feeling sad, when I was feeling lonely, I was eating sugar. When I was feeling less than, when I was feeling unworthy, when I was feeling stupid, I would go and eat sugar, right? On the reverse, though, it was also a moment of celebration, right? Because if I was feeling good, I was eating sugar, right? So all of these awarenesses started coming to me because I had turned on my radar and I started tuning into the truth and having the truth being revealed to me. So just with that awareness alone, and also I guess it was a bit of the letting go process, which was tuning into that emotion that I've been avoiding feeling for my entire life and allowing myself to feel it fully. This led me probably within a week or two to making some really dramatic diet changes. And now I can tell that I'm on a path here to really fully getting a handle on this. I've done the quitting the sugar, quitting the pop, but now I have to take another step, which I was really unwilling to do up until this point, which is reducing really refined carbohydrates. Okay. So, this is going to be what's going to correct this insulin intolerance that I think I've developed. I'm not 100% sure. I don't want to label it, but essentially I've kind of thrown my microbiome out of whack by eating too much sugar over the course of my life. So all of this was from the process of realizing. Without realizing any of this, I could never become free of it. I would be in this constant uphill battle of quitting and starting back up, quitting, starting back up. And what I want for my sugar issue is to be like my alcohol issue. Like alcohol, with the realization I was able to stop like that and never go back, right? Sugar has been a lot tougher. And it's because it was a program that I took on at age 9, maybe even earlier, maybe age 7. And the programs that we take on younger are usually a little bit harder to become free of. Okay, so when you start doing these things, when you first start looking for the original incident, you probably go to things that happened a couple years ago or whatever, but most of it you've been experiencing over and over and over again. So with more dedication to discovering the truth, you'll eventually get to the root. Sugar, for example, has taken me 10 years to finally get to the root. And I think I'm there. I'm not even 100% sure, but I feel like it is. Okay. So when I break this addiction, this will be the last thing that I have to become free of, in my eyes. But you never know. Sometimes when we take off one addiction, one behavior, one coat, we realize we have another one on. So for now, that's what I'm saying. So another tool that's really great, but it's also a tough one, is making a list of how fucked up you are. I like to call this, and this is like right out of AA. Even though I didn't go to AA, I know about the process. I deal with a lot of clients that are coming out of AA and kind of want to take that next step spiritually. So the list of how fucked up you are is like an inventory, essentially, of all the bad things that you did in your life and all the bad things that happened to you in your life. After you make this list, you can go through each item and ask yourself what emotion it created, what belief it created, and how it molded you, how it shaped you into the person that you are today. If you do this, you're going to start to become aware of the programs and belief systems that were created from the bad things that happened to you in your life. They don't have to be gigantic, right? They can be small. So don't just try and look for these really, really big moments, right? They could also be something as simple as a teacher telling you you're never gonna make anything of your life, or you're always gonna be a failure. I don't know. I'm just making this up here, but it doesn't have to be big. So what you want to do before you start this process, you just want to sit quietly for a minute and just ask. You're asking the higher power of your understanding, please reveal the truth to me. I'm ready to break these cycles. I'm ready to break these programs. I'm ready to achieve my maximum potential. I no longer want to be held back. Please reveal to me the incidences in my life that are still creating the unwanted behaviors in my life. You could make that obviously a little bit more eloquent, but you're trying to get to the root incidences in your life. And then sit there and then close your eyes, and then open your eyes after a minute or so, and then just start writing. Don't edit, don't do anything. Just allow yourself to keep writing over and over. Keep writing anything that comes to mind, any moment in your life, anything you did wrong, anything that was done wrong to you. And then after you're done going through each list, each item, and just asking, how has this shaped me? What beliefs did this create? What emotion was tied to this? What did I feel in that moment as a kid? Right? And this will be an indication of how to truly become, well, actually, this is like a bottom-up approach, okay? A top-down approach would be like identify that, which we did first, which is identify the behavior and the thoughts, and then we want to go into the emotions, the beliefs, and the original incident. But there's a flip side of that, which is this: make a list of how fucked up you are, is a bottom-up. Let's try to identify the traumatic moments in our life, and let's look at the beliefs, the emotions, the thoughts, and the behaviors that it's created in my life. So 2 different approaches, both super effective. You'll probably get more out of one than the other depending on what type of left brain, right brain kind of person you are. So these are the tools that I think will help you to create the awareness. And most people listen to podcasts and they don't do anything. So, I kind of challenge you after you listen to this podcast today. It's like actually sit down and do this stuff, right? Everyone wants to educate themselves more, but education is completely useless if you're not actually putting it into practice, right? It's like I read nonstop. I literally right now in my life, I do a Course in Miracles in the morning. I read the Bible, and not because I'm like a Bible thumper, but just because I'm interested in the teachings of Jesus. So I'm reading the Bible from Michael Ford. I'm listening to Dr. David Hawkins' book, Healing and Recovery, and I'm reading Dr. David Hawkins' book, Discovering the Presence of God, at night. So like literally I'm doing like 4 things to constantly keep myself in the field of spiritual development, keeping myself moving. It's like we know that in the physical body that we have to keep moving, because if we don't, we seize up and we can't even bend down and touch our toes. But the same is true in the emotional world, and the mental world, and the spiritual world. We have to keep moving. So you want to keep yourself in this field. And this exercise, or these exercises, will be a way to keep you in the field of spiritual development, of emotional trauma relief, of maximizing your potential. Dr. Joe Dispenza says that your personality creates your reality. Okay, so if you want to change your reality, you need to change your personality. And so I think this quote from Joe Dispenza is a little bit controversial because people are like, be yourself, be who you truly are. But what I'd like to suggest to you here is that who you believe you are today, your sense of I, is not who you truly are. Who you are today is a culmination of all the programs, all the patterns, all the belief systems, all the messed up things that ever happened to you, all of the things that your ego has, all of the programs that your ego has created to protect you. And that is now our sense of I, right? So we all know the person that gets angry all the time. Well, that person will continuously find situations in their life to be angry at all moments. I was once the angry person. I'm not judging someone that's angry, right? I was once the person that got angry at everything, and I constantly found sources of anger in my life, right? When you learn to transcend that anger, then those situations that once angered you are now like you literally just laugh them off, right? So you can see how what we hold in mind tends to manifest. So if we're holding in mind all the time that we're angry, then we're going to continue to attract angry situations into our life. If we're holding in mind all the time that we're undeserving and worthless, then we're going to continue to be shown that in our daily life. So this is the importance of unprogramming ourselves from all of our ego patterns, all the patterns of the ego. Because if we don't, we have a sense of I that is false. And we just want to reconnect with our true self or our higher self and get aligned with our true sense of I that is beyond all of the programs of the ego. And you can start doing this by doing step 1 and becoming aware of what patterns and programs that you've bought into by doing the exercises listed below. So yeah, that's a challenge. Get on it and get to work. Comment below. Message me if you have any questions. I'd love to dig into this deeper with you. Step 1 is awareness. You cannot solve a problem from the same level of consciousness that a problem was created. And if you don't have awareness of a problem, how can you expect to resolve the problem? Thanks for taking the time to listen. Don't forget, if you haven't already, click subscribe, click the like. All of these things help me help get the message out more and more people so that we can all become free and get connected to our true selves and experience the presence of God or the belief of your understanding and tap into infinite potential. Like this is the purpose of what I'm doing here. So yeah, thanks for taking the time to listen, and we'll see you again next week.